Okay.
Coffee.
Have a good episode
Hey,
for it. A little coffee.
We get to share our coffees.
Oh, how sweet. Just like we share our coffees every Wednesday.
Yes.
David Collins. 30 minutes. Show with David Collins.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of David Collins' 30-minute half-hour show. I'm your host, David Collins, and we have another great episode for you today. Really looking forward to today's guest and subjects. A couple of housekeeping items that I wanted to knock out right away. Of course, we haven't seen a lot of episodes of David Collins' 30-minute half-hour show. And I'm not sure exactly what the plan is on there. We have a lot of things coming up this summer that is related to the show, of course. But today we're going to be having a great episode. Our season 3 finale, actually. I thought we'd just wrap up the season with the beginning of the summer 2025. A couple of those upcoming events. Of course, in August, we go on our staff fishing trip. So we'll probably see an episode coming out of there. And also in September, I'm going on a cruise. Have you ever been on a cruise? You kind of dressed like you're on a cruise, Craig.
I'm going on one
today.
in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks? Where are you going?
Yeah. I'm going to Bermuda.
Wow. We're going to Mexico.
Ooh.
And that's very exciting, so I'm looking forward to all those things. It's going to be a great summer of 2025, even if we have some less episodes than we're used to. And of course, remember, every Wednesday, 6:30 a.m. Central, 7:30 a.m. Eastern, Drive Time David Collins, our call-in show. And our guest today is a bit of a co-host of that show, and we want to get into some of that with our guests today, I'm sure. But of course, everybody's favorite segment, Color of the Day. Today's Color of the Day, Carnation Pink. We haven't had many episodes of David Collins' 30-minute half-hour show recently, missing much of the spring. It is now summer, and I was thinking about the great events that were missed that utilize the color Carnation Pink. Carnation Pink originates from the carnation flower, specifically Dianathus caryophyllus, which is native to the Mediterranean region. Made of 255 red, 166 green, and 201 blue, today's color of the day, Carnation Pink. One last thing before we start the show. Of course, our sponsor of the show, Max Motors in Manhattan, Kansas.
Brought to you by Max Motors. Don't overpay on your next vehicle. Max Motors on Highway 24 in Manhattan.
Today's guest is a producer, podcaster, and former stand-up comedian. He's a host of his own show, Very Good Show. He also co-hosts multiple shows with a friend of the show and former guest, Blind Mike Geary, including The Blind Mike Project and Why Are You Laughing? It was tough finding too much information about his stand-up comedy, but during my trip to Boston last year, he was very eager to connect me with other stand-up comedians in the area. Find him verygoodshow.libsyn.com. Please welcome our great guest today, Craig Acone.
Hello, David.
And thanks so much for it. Can you explain that website? Why are there so many extra steps?
You can just go to verygoodshow.org.
Oh, I see. Well, it's good that you're able to plug your show there.
I didn't know we had a Libsyn, to be honest.
What is a Libsyn? Is that something I don't understand?
It's a RSS hosting website that I didn't know we even had.
Oh, do you do your own descriptions on there? It seemed a little weird. Maybe check that out, everybody. But of course, Craig Acone here, and I'm really excited to learn more about you today, Craig. But there was actually another stand-up comedian that I would. Do you consider yourself a stand-up comedian?
No.
How long have you been doing stand-up?
I haven't done it in like a decade.
Oh.
Yeah.
I completely misunderstood that aspect of your life. It's pretty difficult finding information about you.
I'm very quiet. I'm off the grid.
Did you do things before broadcasting in a public forum?
Yeah. I did stand up for like 5 years. And then I went into delivery driver mode and basically quit after I had kids, you know?
Right. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Well, we want to learn more about you, Craig, but there's actually another stand-up comedian that I kind of wanted to talk about first here. Have you ever heard of the comedian Drake Sather?
No.
Drake Sather, that's what I found too. I thought that's kind of what I wanted to talk about him today, because he's not a lot of people know his name, but he was actually the creator of Zoolander.
No kidding.
He was roommates with Norm Macdonald. Drake Sather was a large comedian in the 1980s. I have a quick description I found on the internet here. I thought I'd just read that would catch people up. Drake Sather, 1959 to 2004, was an acclaimed American stand-up comedian, television writer, producer, actor, and director. Born in Seattle, Sather earned an Emmy nomination for his sharp, innovative writing on The Larry Sanders Show. He later joined Saturday Night Live writing staff during 1994 and 1995 season. You never heard of Drake Sather, roommates with Norm Macdonald?
No, he must have been very funny.
Well, he started with David Spade there. He's best known, of course, for Zoolander, and there was a documentary that came out during Zoolander 2. Do you remember when Zoolander 2 came out?
I remember when it came out. I never saw it. 2016.
Well, there was a documentary that went alongside that, of course, with Judd Apatow and Ben Stiller, because all of these people came up in comedy together with Drake Sather. I wanted to play a little clip here of Ben Stiller talking about Drake Sather.
Okay.
Drake Sather asked if I want to be the male model, Derek Zoolander. I said, that's ridiculous. He's like, yeah, that's why I want to do it. And so he had written this little piece, and then we started to play around with it and improv a little bit, and then we shot it, and it was really fun.
People come up to me all the time and say, you should be a model, or you look just like a model, or maybe you should try to be a man who models. And I always have to laugh because I'm so good looking. Of course I'm a model.
Do you like the movie Zoolander? I just watched it the other day. I thought it was so funny. Making references to it. We even used it in Drive Time David Collins.
Yeah.
You ever seen that movie?
I've seen Zoolander, yes.
Of course. I think it's a pretty fun movie. Mm-hmm. So Drake Sather, of course, stand-up comedian, though, and a lot of people are probably wondering, you've never heard of his name. I assume you haven't heard any of his stand-up comedy.
I have not.
Well, I have a clip of his stand-up comedy here. Would you want to take a little listen to that?
More than anything.
It's good to be in a nice comedy club. The last big show I did was this benefit for the Ronald McDonald House. We were taking in thousands of dollars, and halfway through my set, I started thinking, just how big of a house does this fucking clown need? An egomaniac this guy is. I like San Diego, though. It's a nice town. It's really pretty. Of course, last week I had to play in Fresno. It's hard to believe an entire town could have Down syndrome. It's a very boring town. One of those towns where once you've masturbated, the day is pretty much shot.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, he sounds like a mix of Dennis Miller and Norm.
Doesn't that make sense, too? Because that's where he actually originated from. One of his first writing credit ever was on the Dennis Miller Show.
That makes sense.
And that's what we kind of have next here, because he came up, he was hired by Dennis Miller, he came up with David Spade, and I have a clip here of David Spade talking with Dennis Miller, but about his stand-up comedy there, you wonder if you hear like a comedian like Jesselnick, if he was inspired by Drake Sather, or how many people, because he has such an original dark comedy of two-liners, they call it.
Yeah, but we never see where Drake Sather's jokes are going either, until they hit you.
Well, sometimes. I'm not sure. You should listen to some of his stand-up. There's a great special that you can find on YouTube of his, or not special, but a stand-up comedy show with him and Fred Stoller, Ray Romano's neighbor.
Did not know that either.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that you can find about this Drake Sather, very funny stand-up comedian, and he came up with a lot of other funny people too. Of course, Dennis Miller being the first one to hide. Do you have any relationship with Dennis Miller? I remember being in high school and listening to his Black and White album.
I enjoyed him on Weekend Update. He was my favorite.
Is that right?
Aside from Norm.
Didn't do it for long, though, I understand.
No. All the good ones get cut short.
That must have been during the same time that Drake Sather was writing for SNL.
Probably.
So I wanted to take a little listen to this clip here. This is Dennis Miller and David Spade talking about and remembering Drake Sather a little bit and his writing. And of course, they're talking about Norm Macdonald at the beginning of this clip. You like Norm Macdonald.
Love Norm Macdonald.
Of course. That's another thing, too. Norm Macdonald, they were roommates, they're best friends, they were writing partners. Nobody knows about Drake Sather. It's almost like there was a cover-up. And we'll get to a little bit why people are uncomfortable about talking about him in a little moment here. Do you know anything about his passing? Of course not. You didn't even know his name. Let's listen to this clip.
It's
such a Norm.
Hire him on the spot.
Hired him on the spot.
Yep.
Put him in a room with Drake Sather, the great Drake Sather, who was on that Young Comedian special with us. and they tinfoiled the window shut like Elvis. They both smoked Smicks.
Nuts.
And the head writer would go over and ask them for jokes at a certain time, and they bridled at that. And I said, listen, these guys are rare avis. Think of that as a like orchid hothouse. Those are two geniuses. You can't ruin the humidity in there. So I said, I went over to Norm and Drake, and I said, listen, guys, I'm not going to take your best jokes. I don't want to know your best jokes. I need some 6s and 7s for this monologue, because Norm would write jokes that I'd have to hand back to him. They were so brilliant. I said, I can't tell. I'm not going to take this joke. This will be what something you, and Drake too. He was a stone killer. So,
which I'll just pause it there. I thought that was interesting. I've never heard of that, of a host of a show thinking, oh, well, or even the decision that you might make as a comedy writer of having to say, do I use this for my own material or do I use it for the show?
No, that's a very nice move of Dennis Miller.
Isn't that something? What a good
That
boss.
is something. Drake Sather, he'd probably insist on him keeping it. Now you keep it, I bet.
And Norm. I mean, I think he was really referring to Norm there.
So they said, fine. So at 1:30, it literally is like the food slot in Papillon where the jokes would slide out into
I don't get that reference, for the record.
I don't either.
the door.
I don't get half his references.
Out of 12 jokes, some of them were so crazy that you thought, I'm going to go to hell just for seeing this joke. And then a couple were just they were two brilliant minds, and you know how they love to be left alone.
And I have another David Spade clip here pretty soon here, which I thought was interesting. You don't really know about who David Spade came up with in comedy. Of course, it was Apatow and Schneider and Drake Sather.
Drake Sather, he's just in the shadows.
Nobody, exactly. And he's the writer of Zoolander. It's crazy to me that this isn't a subject that anybody's really talked about.
Well, I'm glad we're uncovering it here today.
Well, I wanted to, and I thought you were a good person to kind of talk about this with, being that you are familiar so much with stand-up comedy.
Yeah, Drake Sather is he's on my Mount Rushmore.
What do you think about David Spade these days? I don't really appreciate his podcast, I would say, but I think when he was on, he did that Comedy Central show, he really tries to do original things with other stand-up comedians, too. He's always maintained as a stand-up comedian, which I've enjoyed.
You don't like his SNL podcast with Carvey?
Right, I'm just not sure if those two old men are a good combination.
Once in a while, they got some good nuggets that come out of it, but for the most part, the show's pretty boring, I would say.
Maybe I should check out some of their highlighted clips.
Yes,
but anyway,
definitely.
David Spade there. But of course, we mentioned Norm Macdonald. Some people might hear this clip and not even know he was talking about Drake Sather. But this is a great Norm Macdonald story here about him and Drake Sather joining a writing. Have you ever done a writing class or a joking seminar?
No.
Do you know David North?
That name sounds familiar.
He's a comedian that he's an old man now, but he for his career taught people how to be comedians, and he has a lot of credits. Friend of the show, Robert Wallace, is actually friends with him on Facebook.
Oh,
isn't that interesting? I did a writing class once. I did a sketch writing class with Sam Brown of The Whitest Kids You Know.
Did you learn a lot?
It was a 10-week class, and I did learn a lot. I'm not really that good at school, but I got to take a lot of notes there, and it was an interesting way to think about writing. It was very good. Sam Brown, everybody, but we're going to listen to this Norm Macdonald story. You ready?
I'm ready.
You like Norm Macdonald?
Love Norm Macdonald.
Comedian Drake Sather.
Sure. Well, he's your half a man.
They
were roommates. They were office mates. They were office mates at Dennis Miller.
We were really good buddies. But we figured we'd try to figure out how to write a movie.
Yeah.
So there was this course. I told you this, right?
I think so, yeah.
There's this course, Robert McKee taught this course over 3 days at UCLA.
He's like the most
He's the hackiest, the worst.
But the most famous.
How to write in $3,000.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, and for anybody wondering, it's a slightly longer clip here, but it's Craig Fitzgerald's podcast, I believe. Does that sound right?
Greg Fitzsimmons?
Greg Fitzsimmons. Who's Craig Fitzgerald?
I have no idea.
Craig Fitzsimmons podcasts. Greg, I believe. You're Craig, and he's Greg.
I'm Craig. Yeah.
That must be tough. Do you get upset when people call you Greg?
No, it happens so often.
I bet. Well, even with an accent. How can you tell?
It's true.
I'll tell this quick story. Somebody stopped me the other day at a grocery store. They said, "Did I talk to you yesterday?" And I said, "I'm not sure. What was it about?" And they said, "I don't know. I was talking to someone with an accent. Was that you?" And they're talking to me at the time. You would know if I have an accent at this point, no?
Does this sound like it was me?
Right.
Pretty simple. Yeah.
Anyway, quick little fun aside there.
Exactly. So it's 10 hours a day. So me and Drake we're fucking lost immediately, like an hour in. We don't know what the fucking it is. But he started the thing, by saying, he said, it's all about story. He goes, we all know people. It doesn't matter the contents of the story. It's how you tell the story. We all met great storytellers, and it doesn't matter what the story is. Like, because we've all met people, the worst thing could happen to them. Like their child could die, but they tell the story as nothing. Meanwhile, another woman could be telling a story about how she missed the bus that morning, and just captivate you, with all the details, and it'd be fascinating. So then for the whole rest of the 10 hours, Drake kept turning to him and he'd go, hey, Marjorie, I don't mean to be insensitive, but that story of your boy dying, a bit of a yawner. I don't know if you've heard Mabel's story about getting on the bus this morning, but might pick up a few pointers. And then you just do different variations of it all day long.
Classic story.
I'm putting together that Drake Sather might be the Forrest Gump of comedy. He's just everywhere.
Isn't that interesting? That he's been around. His feet have been in the fire. But we're gonna see a little more about that at the end of his story here. He had a failed project and a pretty tragic ending. And we're gonna get a little mention of that in one of our next clips here. But of course, he had such a career. He was on People's Court. I even found a clip of that, which isn't a great credit, but it's fun to find.
It's not a great credit at all.
But you know what is a good credit? News Radio, at the time at least. Did you ever watch News Radio? I'm so unfamiliar with this show. It was never on my radar.
It's always talked about. I've never watched it.
Isn't that funny? Maybe it's a coastal. Well, you're on one of the coasts. I'm not sure that. Maybe it's a West Coast thing. Because Drake Sather, of course, was a West Coast comedian at a certain point in his life. And this is him on News Radio. And I clipped out a lot of the episode. He doesn't actually have a big part. He plays some businessman's lawyer. So he's a bit of an extra, but he's working with Phil Hartman and Joe Rogan. That must have been interesting.
That must have been fun.
James has some rather...
What a fun crew, especially when Drake Sather got involved.
That's what I mean.
There are specific instructions regarding his care in the event of a life-threatening illness. So, if you please.
Hello, everyone. If you're watching this, I've probably been forced to flee the country due to a mix-up with the IRS.
Whoops. Okay, that's not the right tape. Yeah, pretend you never saw that.
Something about these old sitcoms, too. They all have the same... It's almost like they use the same writers in every sitcom sometimes. I get the gag, but...
I can't unhear Dennis Miller and Drake Sather.
Dennis Miller wasn't on News Radio.
I know, but he sounds exactly like him.
You really think that? That's interesting.
Yeah.
I haven't thought about that.
Go back and look at the tape. I said it before Dennis Miller's name even came up.
Wow. Oh, well, you did say that.
Hello, everyone. Oh, and if I finally achieve my lifelong goal of buying the Harlem Globetrotters, send them on over. Make them run some drills or something. I don't know. I could watch those crazy nuts marks.
I thought you'd like that joke, Craig.
Why is that?
Well, it was funny, and you like comedy.
You know what? You're right.
Well, he goes on about the Globetrotters for quite a while.
Well, I guess we'll have to hire a temporary staff to run the station while we're all over here.
No. Mr. James made it quite clear that he would like business to continue as usual.
Drake Sather on News Radio.
Is that it?
That was just he doesn't have a big part. He just plays the lawyer, business guy. He shows up signing forms and some other scenes too. It's probably a pretty easy paycheck. It doesn't even really sound like he's acting. He's kind of just talking like he's on stage.
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying.
What a good gig. So have you guessed at all how Drake Sather might have passed away?
You keep saying tragic, so I'm guessing it was self-inflicted.
Right.
Yeah.
So we talked a lot about David Spade today, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Maron's podcast, and David Spade was on that episode. And if you listen to that episode, you'll hear him mention Drake Sather probably more than I have today. He just mentions, me and Drake this, me and Drake that, and then he would talk about completely something separate. But this is them initially mentioning the name and kind of talking a little about that. Mark Maron and David Spade.
Do you know the comedian Drake Sather?
Oh, that's the wrong clip.
Funny that Drake Sather, this comedian, gave
I remember Drake. Jesus Christ.
He gave me this great joke where he goes, I don't know if I'll ever get a tattoo. I could picture getting married and having kids, but a tattoo is so permanent. And I thought of that, but
oh, you remember Drake? I mean, that was so sad.
Drake and I were old buddies. Yeah, he killed himself.
Yeah, I know.
And did you
years
hear?
Years ago.
Is this a rumor that he put Post-it notes for the paramedics saying "body this way"?
I don't know.
Did you ever hear that?
I did hear it. It's crazy, man. How old are you? You my age?
He was a funny fuck.
Younger.
So it gets pretty tragic. There's actually something that you might think is worse and more cruel, depending on your perspective. That has been confirmed to be real. That we'll probably hear about in the next clip. Really, where are we?
51,
52.
It's horrible.
God, we've seen dude. Who did I talk to?
Why are we not killing ourselves?
I don't feel like killing myself. Who were your guys when you were coming up? Well, you and Sandler were friends before, right? SNL?
We were friends before. Apatow, Drake, Schneider.
You were all just doing comedy down here?
Yeah, all at the Improv. And we all lived in the Valley, too.
Yeah. Did you live with guys?
Mark Maron with the oddest questions.
Did you live with guys?
But anyway, it was interesting. He does pull that out of David Spade. I would have dug a little more into Drake Sather since nobody ever talks about that comedian. But anyway,
Mark Maron and Post-it notes pointing to his dead body. That's the funniest way to kill yourself.
That's the biggest. A little scavenger hunt for the people to come and find him. Because we'll hear a little bit here. He was on the phone with somebody as he did the act. It was with a gun. And I tried to do a lot of research on this. I always thought it was a shotgun. I guess that's just a rumor. There's no information on what type of gun.
Kurt Cobain was a shotgun.
Is it? I think that's the way to do it. If you're going to, that's the way to confirm it. And that's not actually true. Do you remember that viral YouTube video years ago of that man failing to do it with a shotgun?
I was going to say it's a long gun, and there's way more lethal rounds you could use than a shotgun. You can survive a shotgun blast.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Do they make toe triggers?
I don't think specifically, no.
I've always heard that term, but I wonder, is that a real product?
It's definitely not a real product.
So here's an exclusive that you're not going to find anywhere else except where I found it. The Jerry sent me this clip years ago. I mean, not a year, maybe probably a little over a year ago, and it was very cool. So I saved it and everything, and marked this down because he knew I was a fan of Drake Sather, and he was listening to the Hate Watch podcast on their Patreon, and had a little talk about Drake Sather come up with the host of the show, Devin Costa's mom. Devin Costa is an LA comedian that I've been following for many years. But anyway, this is them talking about a firsthand experience with Drake Sather, which it was just fascinating to me. Would you like to hear this?
I would, more than anything.
I hope you're excited.
Which is very interesting. I used to know this kid, Dallas. I shouldn't say his. Fuck, I said his first name.
Patreon. Who cares?
Dallas Sather, right? Sather. His father was Drake Sather. His father was best friends with Norm Macdonald. He was the reason that he wrote
Zoolander.
He wrote Zoolander. He was the creator of Zoolander.
Classic.
Wow. And literally the creator of the character Zoolander.
Yeah.
Incredible, like 80s comic, very dark guy. And I remember being in school. I used to hang out with this kid. I used to go to his house in Glendale. Remember that, Mom?
Very sweet kid.
Remember the Glendale house? Remember how big their house was?
Spanish. Well, see, people like that don't think that house was big.
Well, but to me, it was a big.
I had people say shit like that.
Maybe
Devin's living under a damn staircase.
I was a little gay kid. I was like, what the Spanish architecture here is incredible.
Devin was Harry Potter.
These guys are terrible at staying on subject, but there is some interesting tidbits about Drake Sather in this clip. You know, I thought I weeded it out, but I guess there is just a lot of banter in here. That's all right. We enjoy a little banter.
Yeah, once in a while.
Devin Costa and his mom. I've never done that on my show where I call my mother and have her and talk to her while doing the show.
That's a big house, right, Mom? Ew, shut up.
Harry Potter. He was like, oh my God.
And I remember hanging out there.
Happy, obviously.
I remember his dad coming out and like helping us play basketball, but he seemed miserable. The guy seemed like fucking really, really depressed. And then months later, you tell me, Dallas's dad killed himself.
Oh no!
Yeah.
And this guy is Drake Sather. You guys could look him up. All the fans can look him up. He shot himself on the phone with his wife.
Oh yes, with a big old shotgun.
With a shotgun.
And he had 4 kids.
He had 4 kids.
Young boys.
And there was a rumor going around that he left sticky notes around the house leading up to where he was dead, like jokes leading up
really
to where he died. I don't think that's true, actually.
And he's like, knock, knock. Knock, knock indefinitely, because I'm not coming to the door. There's notes like that.
Yeah, it's like knock, knock. Yeah, just come in and no one's answering.
Right.
But it sounds fun.
I don't either, really.
Like Riddler? Like, what's going on?
I don't buy that. I don't buy that, but that was a rumor that he left sticky notes going up to where he died. But he shot him.
Rumor?
Yeah.
It's an odd rumor. It's an odd rumor if there's not some truth to it. But,
just a sticky note that says, what is this, a school for suicidal parents?
Oh, man, he pulls it all back to Zoolander. Good job, Connor. God bless you. And you.
These guys love themselves.
That mom has an atrocious laugh.
Oh, that's poor woman. Leave her out of this. She's a bystander. She's called on the phone.
Hey, she's laughing at Drake Sather and not on my watch.
Right. Well, he's laughing at these guys. We have a working relationship. These Devin Costa and I. He shouted out our show. We have a great ad read from him, and he has this clip that I've never used, but I finally get to use. Isn't that nice?
That's nice.
I think that's about it here. I think we're wrapping up this clip. There's probably about 20 seconds left, if that.
Drunk. We're all drunk. But Mom,
he was leaving riddles.
Wasn't that crazy? I remember you telling me that, and I was like, that took me a while to get over. I was like, what? And then I got into comedy, and I'm like, wait, didn't you know a comedian that was like made Zoolander, and he killed himself? Fucking that's insane.
All right. Isn't that interesting?
Fucked. That's so fucked. Is there any more details on the phone call?
Well, we have there is an article from Esquire that you can find a little bit, and it talks about. I pulled this passage. Later that evening, a distraught Sather called Marnie and shot himself while she was still on the line. Marnie says, 10 years later, I feel okay about that because maybe he didn't want to be alone. This is going to sound weird, but I feel almost honored that I was there with him. I would prefer that than him being alone. Isn't that sad?
That's very sad.
Something else about that Drake Sather. And, you wonder, why would such a funny comedian that has all these celebrity friends and a good career and a wife and 4 kids, why would he choose to commit suicide? Well, his final project was a Mr. Ed pilot. And it did not go well. So we'll take a quick listen to the first minute of the Mr. Ed pilot. Isn't that, Mr. Ed? Mr. Ed, it would be a remastered Mr. Ed. Of course, Mr. Ed is an old 1950s, 1960s. How old is that show? 70s or 60s?
It's very old. It's about the talking horse, right?
It's a talking horse. That's exactly right. So there's a family that moves to a farm, and at that farm, there's a talking horse. Let's take a little listen to Drake Sather's reimagining.
New York City, the noise, the lights, the excitement. Maybe a little too much excitement for a 15-year-old girl. That's why Wilbur Pope moved his family out to this farm. My farm. By the way, I'm Mr. Ed. Man, I'm going to have my hooves full with this one.
I mean, I go to a couple of clubs, barf on one cop, and he freaks out and buys this stupid farm to get me out of New York. I know. I don't know what he'd do if he ever found out at the time that I... Gotta go.
Isn't that fun?
Do you know who voiced Mr. Ed there?
Who? Can you tell? I
don't know.
I can double check.
It sounds very familiar, so I wasn't sure if you knew.
You're listening to
David
Collins.
30 minutes. Show with David Collins. Listen at work, at home, or on your device. Stream us now.
It's George Jefferson. It's George Jefferson.
Sounds
2004 Mr. Ed remake.
Sounds like a fake name. I've never heard of him.
Well, Sherman Helmsley?
Who are these people?
He was the star of The Jeffersons.
Oh.
Yeah.
Very good. Anyway.
Glad we got to the bottom of
little
that.
Drake Sather. So, of course, he wrote Mr. Ed. It did not go well, and he was going through some sort of depression. His son was playing basketball with Devin Costa, and he called his wife and did the unthinkable. Which I watch a lot of body cam footage. Apparently, the unthinkable can just mean anything these days, but I usually mean suicide.
Yeah. Is Mr. Costa, did he play a role in the suicide by any chance?
I don't believe so.
Did he say Mr. Ed sucks while playing basketball?
I wonder if he was even aware of the show. Who would have
Doesn't
caught
sound
that
like
pilot?
anyone was. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, anyway, that was a little... what do you think about Drake Sather? Do you have any opinions there? Are you excited that you've heard about him now?
I'm very excited I heard of him. Leaving sticky notes to your body and killing yourself because Mr. Ed pilot is pretty funny.
What a story. You would have thought that it came out of the hands of a comedian writing.
Yes. You'd think he would have done better.
And of course, that sound means that it's time for our first game today. We wouldn't let an episode go by without playing any game. And I hope you're ready for this game and been paying attention, because our game today is Drake Sather Trivia. We have 3 questions that are going to be answered with something that you've learned today about Drake Sather. And we're going to see how well you know the comedian. Are you ready to play Drake Sather Trivia?
I am.
That's perfect. All right, so I'm going to ask you a question. It could be, well, why don't we just jump into round 1? You'll see what this looks like. Yep. Name 3 of Drake Sather's credits. Name 3 of Drake Sather's credits.
SNL writer, news radio lawyer. Oh man, and People's Court.
Well, that's certainly true. I thought that the Dennis Miller Show might get a mention again, but that is exactly right. He also wrote for the Larry Sanders Show, and you could probably have even mentioned some of his Live at the Improv or something like that, I suppose. But
I could have mentioned Zoolander, you know.
Oh, Zoolander, of course. Anyway, Drake Sather's credits. Round 2. What was Drake Sather's first TV writing credit?
The Dennis Miller Show?
What makes you think that? There's been a lot of mention of different shows that he's written for.
No fucking idea.
That's exactly right. He was first hired on the Dennis Miller Show, and then went on. He's best known, I think, for the Larry Sanders Show. His writing, apparently, they called it innovative. I'm not really sure. I don't know much about the Larry Sanders Show. I'm more familiar with the Ben Stiller Show. Do you remember that? One season.
I never watched it.
The Ben Stiller Show, it's very funny. It ran from 92 to 93 for one season. And during that time, Bob Odenkirk was writing for the show. And they sent in, right at the midway through the season, Janine Garofalo was on that show. Halfway through the season, David Cross flew in from the East Coast to write in LA for the Ben Stiller Show. The Ben Stiller Show didn't make a second season. Now David Cross there is without a job. Him and Bob Odenkirk start Mr. Show, with a lot of that cast from the Ben Stiller Show.
Is that the origin story of Mr. Show?
Fairly concisely.
Wow, did not know that.
Fun
Shout
fact.
Out,
we learn a lot about
Drake
comedy
Sather.
on David Collins' 30-minute half-hour show.
That's right. Shout out Drake Sather.
Why don't we jump into round 3 of Drake Sather Trivia? How many children did Drake Sather have?
He had 4 boys.
Are you looking this up?
No, I pay attention.
Because I did mention at some point in the show that he had 4 children. I believe his first one was a daughter, I believe. But it was.
Oh, was it?
I believe
thought
so.
it was 4 boys.
With his first wife and then his second wife, he had 3 boys. Is my understanding. Maybe I'm incorrect there. Somebody correct me if you want to make sure that we're accurate on the show. Email me, dc30minutehalfhour@gmail.com. Well, Craig, I'm sorry that we didn't have a lot of time to learn more about you today, but I did want to kind of touch about Drake Sather on the show. And I'm glad that you were here to do that with me.
Yeah, I mean, I never heard of him before. I'm glad I know everything about him now, apparently.
Right.
And
a bit of a comedy history show today.
If you're going to rank like funny suicides, that's got to be up there.
Certainly. That'd be a fun top 10 list. I'm a big fan of top 10 lists. In fact, today would have been the most appropriate day to do that top 10 list and then end with number 1 for Drake Sather.
Drake Sather.
Anyway.
Mr. Ed Pilot.
Craig Acone, everybody. Very good show. The Blind Mike Project. Why are you laughing? Am I missing any of your projects?
That's it.
Well, thanks so much for coming on the show today. Do you have anything you want to say to our audience?
I appreciate you all. And God bless David Collins. And listen to Drive Time David Collins when this is on break.
Right. Every Wednesday, 7:30 a.m. Eastern, Drive Time David Collins. Boy, what a great episode. That's perfect. For everybody listening, I've been David Collins, and you've been the best.
David Collins.
30 minutes. Show with David Collins.